welcome back to another Hot Girl Reads. This is your girl Anna Bay the Angel back at it with another video. Guys, I literally just took a nap as my break. I took it as my break. I haven't taken a real break today, so I went and took a nap. It was super needed, I would say, like just a cool 20-minute nap during your break. Like if you already like eat your lunch or whatever, just that little power snooze, it helps so much. It helps so much. Sorry. Hey, oh, what is it? What is this?
The new law.
The Florida law, the registration.
So if I already sold them a car, can they like
With
a passport?
Yeah.
But I did sell them a car like last month without a passport. I mean, with a passport. That's okay.
If
new deals.
start September 23rd.
Oh, okay.
The Monday.
Yeah, patient. Okay, so if you guys know, we are opening. I'm on live. I went upstairs. Oh, you want to say hi to my live?
Right now.
Yes, nobody on my live yet.
But it's YouTube or
yeah,
TikTok
YouTube.
or what?
YouTube. I just took my nap. I feel so much better. Nice and refreshed. Wake up.
YouTube?
Yeah, on YouTube.
Your channel.
Okay, guys, so back to business. So guys, we are opening up your books to the 48 Laws of Power by Mr. Robert Greene. If you have been keeping up, then go ahead and open up your pages to page 254. We are looking at Law 31. Okay, so Law 31. Control the options. Get others to play with the cards you deal. Judgment. The best deceptions. Should I have it like right here so it looks like I'm reading this and looking at you guys? Hold on. The best deceptions are the ones that seem to give the person a choice. Your victims feel like they are in control, but are actually your puppets. Give people options that come out in your favor, whichever one they choose. Sorry, I actually don't feel like holding this. Let me see. Can you just stay like that? Okay, sorry guys. Technical difficulties. Let me get a different thing I could put right here. Okay. I just don't feel like holding the book right now. Let me put this actually this like that and this like that. Okay. If you can see the setup, it's so funny. It's not freaking. Let me just get on the bottle of water. It's like so thick. Okay. So, where was I? Okay. So the best deceptions are the ones that seem to give the other person a choice. Your victims feel like they are in control, but are actually your puppets. Give people options that come out in your favor, whichever one they choose. Force them to make choices between the lesser of the two evils, both of which serve your purpose. Put them on the horns of a dilemma. They are gored wherever they turn. So observance of the law number 1. From early in his reign, Ivan IV, later known as Ivan the Terrible, had to confront an unpleasant reality. The country desperately needed reform. but he lacked the power to push it through. The greatest limit of his authority came from the boyars, the Russian princely class that dominated the country and terrorized the peasantry. In 1553, at the age of 23, Ivan fell ill. Lying in bed, nearing death, he asked the boyars to swear allegiance to his son as the new Tsar. Some hesitated, some even refused. Then and there, Ivan saw he had no power over the boyars. He recovered from his illness, but he never forgot the lesson. The boyars were out to destroy him. And indeed, in the years to come, many of the most powerful of them defected to Russia's main enemies, Poland and Lithuania, where they plotted their return, and over Kurbsky suddenly turned against him, defecting to Lithuania in 1564 and becoming the strongest of Ivan's enemies. When Kurbsky began raising troops for an invasion, the royal dynasty seemed suddenly more precarious than ever. When emigre nobles fomenting invasion from the west, Tartars bearing down from the east, and the boyars stirring up trouble within the country, Russia's vast size made it a nightmare to defend. Sorry guys, I cannot read like this. All of that effort. Okay, I cannot read like that. I'm so sorry guys. I'm gonna work on it next time, like the whole setup of how I'm gonna have the book, but literally having it standing up and looking up and down is impossible. Okay, so where was I? In whatever direction Ivan, because like, okay, I was saying Ivan, but the Russian way to say Ivan is Ivan. So Ivan struck. He would leave himself vulnerable on the other side. Only if he had absolute power could he deal with this many hot-headed hydra, and he had no such power. Even brooded until the morning of December 3rd, 1564, when the citizens of Moscow awoke to a strange sight. Hundreds of sleds filled the square before the Kremlin, loaded with the Tsar's treasures and provisions for the entire court. They watched in disbelief as the Tsar and his court boarded the sleds and left town. Without explaining why, he established himself in the village south of Moscow. For an entire month of a kind of terror gripped the capital, for the Muscovites feared that Ivan had abandoned them to the bloodthirsty boyars. Shops closed up and riotous mobs gathered daily. Finally, on January 3rd, I thought I was going to say January 6th. Okay, let me focus. January 3rd of 1565, a letter arrived from the Tsar explaining that he could no longer bear the boyars' betrayals and decided to abdicate once and for all. Read aloud in public, the letter had a startling effect. Merchants and commoners blamed the boyars for Ivan's decision and took to the streets, terrifying the nobility with their fury. Soon, a group of delegates representing the church, the princes, and the people made the journey to Ivan's village and begged the Tsar, in the name of the Holy Land of Russia, to return to the throne. Ivan listened but would not change his mind. After days of hearing their pleas, however, he offered his subjects a choice. Either they grant him absolute powers to govern as he pleased, with no interference from the boyars, or they find a new leader. Faced with the choice between the civil war and the acceptance of the despotic power, almost every sector of the Russian society opted for a strong Tsar, calling for Ivan's return to Moscow and the restoration of the law and order. In February, with much celebration, Ivan returned to Moscow. The Russians could no longer complain if he behaved dictatorially. They had given him the power themselves. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and interpret what the Frika just read to you. Ivan the Terrible faced a terrible dilemma. To give in to the boyars would lead to certain destruction, but civil war would bring a different kind of ruin. Even if Ivan came out of such a war on top, the country would be devastated and the divisions would be stronger than ever. His weapon of choice in the past had been to make a bold and offensive move. Now, however, that the kind of move would turn against him. The more boldly he confronted his enemies, the worse the reactions would spark. The main weakness of the show of force is that it stirs up resentment and eventually leads to a response that eats at your authority. Ivan, immensely creative in the use of power, saw clearly that the only path to the kind of victory he wanted was with a false withdrawal. He would not force the country to over his position. He would give it options, either his abdication and certain anarchy or his accession to the absolute power. To back up his move, he made it clear that he preferred to abdicate. Call my bluff, he said, and watch what happens. No one called his bluff. By withdrawing for just a month, he showed the country a glimpse of the nightmares that would follow his abdication. Tartar invasions, civil war, ruin. All of these did eventually come to pass after Ivan's death in the infamous time of troubles. Withdrawal and disappearance are classic ways of controlling the options. You give people a sense of how things will fall apart without you, and you offer them a choice. I stay away and you suffer the consequences, or I return and under circumstances that I dictate. In this method of controlling people's options, they choose the option that gives you the power because the alternative is just too unpleasant. You force their hand, but indirectly. They seem to have a choice. Whenever people feel they have a choice, they walk into your trap much more easily. Okay, guys, so let's go ahead and read the first little red blurb. The German Chancellor Bismarck, enraged at the constant criticism for Rudolf Virchow, the German pathologist and liberal politician, had his seconds call upon the scientists to challenge him to a duel. As the challenge party, I have the choice of weapons, said Virchow, and I choose these. He held aloft two large and apparently identical sausages. One of these, he went on, is infected with deadly germs and the other is perfectly sound. Let His Excellency decide which one he wishes to eat and I will eat the other. Almost immediately, the message came back that the Chancellor had decided to cancel the duel. The Little Brown Book of Antidotes, Clifton Fademan, ed. 1985. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into observance of the law number 2. As the 17th century French courtesan Ninon de l'Enclos found that her life had certain pleasures, her lovers came from royalty and aristocracy, and they paid her well, entertained her with her wit and intellect, satisfied her rather demanding sensual needs, and treated her almost as an equal. Such a life was infinitely preferable to marriage. In 1643, however, Ninon's mother died suddenly, leaving her at the age of 23 to tally alone in the world. No family, no dowry, nothing to fall upon. A kind of panic overtook her, and she entered a convent, turning her back on her illustrious lovers. A year later, she left the convent and moved to Lyons. When she finally reappeared in Paris in 1648, lovers and suitors flocked to her door in greater numbers than ever before, for she was the wittiest and most spirited courtesan of the time, and her presence had been greatly missed. Ninon's followers quickly discovered, however, that she changed her old ways of doing things. She had set up a new system of options. The dukes, seigneurs, and princes who wanted to pay for her service could continue to do so, but they were no longer in control. She would sleep with them when she wanted, according to her whim. All their money bought them was a possibility. If it was her pleasure to sleep with them only once a month, so be it. Those who did not want to be what Ninon called a payer could join the large and growing group of men she called her martyrs, men who visited her apartment principally for her friendship, her biting wit, and her lute playing in the company of the most vibrant minds of the period, including Molière, La Rochefoucauld, and Saint Evremond. The martyrs, too, however, entertained a possibility. She would regularly select from them a favorite, a man who would become her lover without having to pay, and whom she would abandon herself completely for as long as she desired. A week, a few months, rarely longer. A payer could not become a favorite, but a martyr had no guarantee of becoming one, and indeed could remain disappointed for an entire lifetime. The poet Charlevel, for example, never enjoyed Ninon's favors, but never stopped coming to visit. He did not want to do without her company. As word of this system reached polite French society, Ninon became an object of intense hostility. Her reversal of the position of the courtesan scandalized the queen mother and her court. Much to their horror, however, it did not discourage the male suitors. Indeed, it only increased their numbers and intensified their desire. It became an honor to be a payer, helping Ninon to maintain her lifestyle and her glittering salon, accompanying her sometimes to the theater, and sleeping with her when she chose. Even more distinguished were the martyrs, enjoying her company without paying for it, and maintaining the hope, however remote, of someday becoming her favorite. That possibility spurred on many young noblemen. As word spread that none of among the courtesans could surpass Ninon in the art of love, and so the married and the single, the old and the young, entered her web and chose one of the two options presented to them, both of which amply satisfied her. I kind of love it. I kind of love that story. That's kind of one of my favorite stories in the book so far. Interpretation. The life of the courtesan entailed the possibility of power that was denied to a married woman, but it also had obvious perils. The man who paid for the courtesan's service, in essence, owned her, determining when he could possess her and when later on he would abandon her. As she grew older, her options narrowed as fewer men chose her. To avoid a life of poverty, she had to amass her fortune while she was young. The courtesan's legendary greed and then reflected a practical necessity, yet also lessened her allure. Since the illusion of being desired is most important to men, who are often alienated if their partner is too interested in their money, as the courtesan aged, then she faced the most difficult fate. Ninon de l'Enclos had a horror of any kind of dependence. She early on tasted a kind of equality with her lovers, and she would not settle into the system that left her such distasteful options. Strangely enough, the system she devised in its place seemed to satisfy her suitors as much as it did her. The payers may have had to pay, but the fact that Ninon would only sleep with them when she wanted to gave them the thrill unavailable with every other courtesan. She was yielding out of her own desire. The martyr's avoidance of the taint of having to pay gave them the sense of superiority. As members of Ninon's fraternity of admirers, they also might someday experience the ultimate pleasure of being her favorite. Finally, Ninon did not force her suitors into either category. They could choose which side they preferred, a freedom that left them a vestige of masculine pride. Such is the power of giving people a choice, or rather the illusion of one, for they are playing with the cards that you have dealt them. Where the alternative set up by Ivan the Terrible involved a certain risk, one option would have led to his losing his power. Ninon created a situation in which every option redounded to her favor. From the payers, she received the money that she needed to run her salon, and from the martyrs, she gained the ultimate in power. She could surround herself with a bevy of admirers, a harem from which to choose her lovers. The system, though, depended on one critical factor, the possibility. However remote that a martyr could become a favorite, the illusion that riches, glory, or sensual satisfaction may someday fall into your victim's lap is an irresistible carrot to include in your list of choices. That hope, however slim, will make men accept the most ridiculous situations because it leaves them the all important option of a dream. The illusion of choice, married to the possibility of future good fortune, will lure the most stubborn sucker into your glittering web. Okay, guys, so let's read some little red stories. The first one is called The Liar. Have you guys heard that song by V's, Sexy Liar? Okay, so let's get into it. Once upon a time, there was a king of Armenia who, being a curious turn of mind and in need of some new diversion, sent his heralds throughout the land to make the following proclamation. Hear this. Whatever man among you can prove himself the most outrageous liar in Armenia shall receive an apple made of pure gold from the hands of His Majesty the King. People began to swarm from the palace, from every town and the hamlet in the country. People of all ranks and conditions, princes, merchants, farmers, priests, rich and poor, tall and short, fat and thin. There was no lack of liars in the land, and each one of them told his tale to the king. A ruler, however, has heard practically every sort of lie, and none of those now told him convinced the king that he had listened to the best of them. The king was beginning to grow tired of this new sport and was thinking of calling the whole contest off without declaring a winner, when there appeared before him a poor, ragged man carrying a large earthenware pitcher under his arm. "What can I do for you?" asked His Majesty. "Sire," said the poor man, slightly bewildered, "surely you remember. You owe me a pot of gold, and I have come to collect it." "You are a perfect liar, sir," exclaimed the king. "I owe you no money." "A perfect liar, am I?" said the poor man. "Then give me the golden apple." The king, realizing that the man was trying to trick him, started to hedge. "No, you are not a liar." "Then give me the pot of gold you owe me, sire," said the man. The king saw his dilemma. He handed over the golden apple. This is by the Armenian Folk Tales and Fables, retold by Charles Downing in 1993. Okay. And then I have another little red blurb, and this one is going to be a little bit more modern. This is about Mr. J.P. Morgan Sr. Okay? So J.P. Morgan Sr. once told a jeweler of his acquaintance that he was interested in buying a pearl scarf pin. Just a few weeks later, the jeweler happened upon the magnificent pearl. He had it mounted in an appropriate setting and sent it to Morgan, together with the bill for $5,000. The following day, the package was returned. Morgan's accompanying note read, "I like the pin, but I don't like the price. If you will accept the enclosed check for $4,000, please send back the box with the seal unbroken." The enraged jeweler refused the check and dismissed the messenger in disgust. He opened the box to reclaim the unwanted pin, only to find that it had been removed. In its place was a check for $5,000. By the Little Brown Book of Anecdotes, Clifton Fadiman, ed. 1985. Okay, guys, so what do you think so far? We're almost done. Let's go ahead and get into keys to power. Okay, guys? So words like freedom, options, and choice evoke a power of possibility far beyond the reality of the benefits they entail. When examined closely, the choices we have in the marketplace, in elections, in our jobs, tend to have noticeable limitations. They are often a matter of choice simply between A and B. With the rest of the alphabet out of the picture, yet as long as the faintest mirage of choice flickers on, we rarely focus on the missing options. We choose to believe that the game is fair, and we have and that we have our freedom. We prefer not to think too much about the depth of our liberty to choose. This unwillingness to probe the smallness of our choices stems from the fact that too much freedom creates a kind of anxiety. The phrase unlimited options sounds infinitely promising, but unlimited options would actually paralyze us and cloud our ability to choose. Our limited range of choices comforts us. This supplies the clever and cunning with enormous opportunities for deception. For people who are choosing between alternatives, find it hard to believe that they are being manipulated or deceived. They cannot see that you are allowing them a small amount of free will in exchange for a much more powerful imposition of your own will. Setting up a narrow range of choices then should always be a part of your deceptions. There is a saying, if you can get a bird to walk into the cage on its own, it will sing that much more prettily. The following are among the most common forms of controlling the options. Okay, number 1. Color the choices. This was a favorite technique by Henry Kissinger. As President Richard Nixon's Secretary of State, Kissinger considered himself better informed than his boss, and he believed that in most situations he would make the best decision on his own. But if he tried to determine policy, he would offend or perhaps enrage a notoriously insecure man. So Kissinger would propose 3 or 4 choices of action for each situation and would present them in such a way that the one he preferred always seemed to be the best solution compared to the others. Time after time, Nixon fell for the bait, never suspecting that he was moving where Kissinger pushed him. This is an excellent device to use on an insecure master. Number 2. Force the resistor. One of the main problems faced by Dr. Milton H. Erickson, a pioneer of hypnosis therapy in the 1950s, was the relapse. His patients might seem to be recovering rapidly, but their apparent susceptibility to the therapy masked a deep resistance. They would soon relapse into old habits, blame the doctor, and stop coming to him. To avoid this, Erickson began ordering some patients to have a relapse and make themselves feel as bad as when they first came in, to go back to square one. Faced with this option, the patients would usually choose to avoid the relapse, which of course was what Erickson really wanted. This is a good technique to use on children and other willful people who enjoy doing the opposite of what you ask them. Push them to choose what you want them to do by appearing to advocate the opposite. Number 3, alter the playing field. In the 1860s, John D. Rockefeller set out to create an oil monopoly. If he tried to buy up the smaller oil companies, they would figure out what he was doing and fight back. Instead, he began secretly buying up the railway companies that transported the oil. When he attempted to take over a particular company and was met with resistance, he reminded them of their dependence on the rails. Refusing them shipping or simply raising their fees could ruin their business. Rockefeller altered the playing field so that the only options the small oil producers had were the ones he gave them. In this tactic, your opponents know their hand is being forced, but it doesn't matter. The technique is effective against those who resist at all costs. Okay, now, number 4, the shrinking options. The late 19th century art dealer Ambrose Vollard perfected this technique. Customers would come to Vollard's shop to see some Cézannes. He would show 3 paintings, neglect to mention the price, and pretend to doze off. The visitors would have to leave without deciding. They usually come back the next day to see the paintings again. But this time, Vollard would pull out less interesting works, pretending he thought they were the same ones. I have to sneeze. Okay, we're good. It's like right there. It's like right there in my nose. pretending he thought they were the same ones. The baffled customers would look at the new offerings, leave to think them over, and return yet again. Once again, the same thing would happen. Villard would show the paintings of lesser quality still. Finally, the buyers would realize they had a better grab at what he was showing them, because tomorrow they would have to settle for something worse, perhaps at even higher prices. A variation on this technique is to raise the price every time the buyer hesitates and another day goes by. This is an excellent negotiation ploy to use on the chronically indecisive, who fall for the idea that they are getting a better deal today than if they wait till tomorrow. Number 5, the weak man on the precipice. No sé. The weak are the easiest to maneuver by controlling their options. Cardinal de Retz, the great 17th century provocateur, served as an unofficial assistant to the Duke of Orleans, who was notoriously indecisive. Hi, Victor. Welcome to the live. Yes, I think you should get the book. It is a great book. Robert Greene is a great author. Get the book and definitely spend some time to like read over multiple times in like what he's saying, and like in areas in your life where you probably in areas in your life where you probably could have done things better or done things differently. You could definitely get the book and read over it, so then future you will kind of know what to do in these situations. You know what I'm saying? And definitely what I would suggest you do is like watch a couple of Mr. Robert Greene's interviews, and he like explains why he even wrote the book, what was the purpose of the book, and how it can help people. Okay, so back to what I was saying. Was notoriously indecisive, right? It was a constant struggle to convince the Duke to take action. He would hem and haw, weigh the options, and wait till the last moment, giving everyone around him an ulcer. Oh my God. But Retz discovered a way to handle him. He would describe all sorts of dangers, exaggerating them as much as possible, until the Duke saw a yawning abyss in every direction except one. The one Retz was pushing him to take. This tactic is similar to the color of the choices, but with the weak, you have to be more aggressive. Work on their emotions. Use the fear and terror to propel them into action. Try reason, and they will always find a way to procrastinate. Now, brothers in crime, number 6. This is a classical con artist technique. You attract your victims to some criminal scheme, creating a bond of blood and guilt between you. They participate in your deception, commit a crime, or think they do. See the story of Sam Giesel in Law 3. Check that video, Law 3. And are easily manipulated. Serge Stavisky, the great French con artist of the 1920s, so entangled in the government in his scams and swindles that the state did not dare to prosecute him and chose to leave him alone. It is often wise to implicate in your deceptions the very person who can do you the most harm. If you fail, their involvement can be subtle. Even a hint of their involvement will narrow the options and buy their silence. Okay, guys, so this is going to be the last key to power of this chapter. This is the 7th one, okay? The horns of a dilemma. This idea was demonstrated by General William Sherman's infamous march through Georgia during the American Civil War. Although Confederates knew what direction Sherman was heading in, they never knew if he would attack from the left or the right, for he divided his army into 2 wings. And if the rebels retreated from one wing, they found themselves facing the other. This is a classic trial lawyer technique. The lawyer leads the witness to decide between two possible explanations of an event, both of which poke a hole in their story. They have to answer the lawyer's questions, but whatever they say, they hurt themselves. The key to this move is to strike quickly. Deny the victim the time to think of an escape. As they wriggle between the horns of dilemma, they dig their own grave. Now understand this. In your struggles with your rivals, it will often be necessary for you to hurt them. And if you are clearly the agent of their punishment, expect for a counterattack. Expect revenge. If, however, they seem to themselves to be the agents of their own misfortune, they will submit quietly. When Ivan left Moscow for his rural village, the citizens asking him to return agreed to his demand for absolute power. Over the years to come, they resented him less for the terror he unleashed on the country because, after all, they had granted it to him. Less the terror, his power themselves. This is why it is always good to allow your victims their choice of poison and to cloak your involvement in providing it to them as far as possible. Hold on. So guys, close your eyes. Imagine this, unless you are driving or handling heavy machinery where you have to keep your eyes open. Close your eyes and imagine this, okay? The horns of the bull. The bull backs you into the corner with its horns, not a single horn, which you might be able to escape, but a pair of horns that trap you within their hold. Run right or run left. Either way, you move into their piercing ends and are gored. Dun dun dun. Okay guys, so this is the authority to the law. For the wounds and every other evil that men inflict upon themselves spontaneously and of their own choice are in the long run less painful than those inflicted by others. And that's by Niccolo Machiavelli, 1469 to 1527. So this is going to be a reversal to the law if that, what I just read, does not work for you and cannot apply to you. Okay? Controlling the options has one main purpose: to disguise yourself as the agent of power and punishment. Thank you, Victor. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And honestly, the people, my community is coming. It's coming. I'm not going to rush it, but when it comes, it comes. So in the right timing. Okay, so controlling the options has one main purpose: to disguise yourself as the agent of power and punishment. The tactic works best then for those whose power is fragile and who cannot operate too openly without the incurring suspicion, resentment, and anger. Even as a general rule, however, it is rarely wise to be seen as exerting power directly and forcefully. No matter how secure or strong you are, it is usually more elegant and more effective to give people the illusion of choice. On the other hand, by limiting other people's options, you sometimes limit your own. There are situations in which it is to your advantage to allow your rivals a large degree of freedom as you watch them operate and give yourself rich opportunities to spy, gather information, and plan your deceptions. The 19th century banker James Rothschild liked this method. He felt that if he tried to control his opponent's movements, he lost a chance to observe their strategy and plan a more effective course. The more freedom he allowed them in the short term, the more forcefully he could act against them in the long run. Okay, guys, so that is the end of the Law 31. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to just give you briefly my opinion on that chapter. I believe that, that's a big thing in sales. It's like when you're giving the customer options, it's like you're giving them options, but it's like the option. So you give them options so they feel like they have a choice, but it's really like, okay, these are your options. Either way it's gonna go is gonna benefit the person who's selling on the other side. So I can definitely use whatever like was in that chapter if you deal with sales or anything like that as like a negotiation tactic, how to negotiate with someone, give them choices so they feel like they're still in control, so they feel like they still are the person that is in control. But at the end of the day, who is in control is the person that's giving them the options, right? Everybody is in control of themselves. Nobody can control anybody else unless you like plant a chip in their brain and you can control like that. But at the end of the day, you can only control yourself. You cannot control anybody else. But if you are in a situation where you have to negotiate or anything like that, you can be in control by controlling the options. Like Mr. Greene said, sometimes I feel like he just states the obvious that, like, it's just so obvious, right? But thanks, guys, for watching. Bye.